Hello, and thank you for joining me. My name is John Bilotta. I'm the Senior Research and Extension Coordinator here at the Water Resources Center at the University of Minnesota. I'm also the administrator for the Minnesota Stormwater Research Council. What I intend to do here over the next few minutes is to present to you the state of urban stormwater research needs in Minnesota and invite you to join us in identifying research priorities for the years ahead. This effort will help us provide focus for our research investments the Council makes in the years to come. We recognize that research stormwater needs are not static. Needs evolve and new ones emerge. The work that we're about to embark in to identify priority research needs have multiple uses beyond the Research Council. It influences work that many of you and our partners embark in. The purpose of this presentation is to provide you some background prior to you providing us input on research needs. Let us begin. Some thought questions that I asked you to think about as I guide you through this presentation. What information or research is needed about urban stormwater runoff, contaminants, or sources that we don't already know? What research could expand pollution prevention practices? What practices are you having a difficult time designing and implementing because there are gaps in the information available to support them? What is that specific information, data, or research gap? What practices are failing or operating ineffectively or not performing their intended function? And why is that? Is the lack of information the culprit? Is there a tool or a resource that could make your work in the application of stormwater practices, BMPs, or stormwater control measures more effective and efficient? This is not an exhaustive list of questions, but hopefully these begin to get your mind thinking about what are my information or research needs. Before we go any further, I do want to stop for a moment and reflect about the mission of the Minnesota Stormwater Research Council that was established formally in 2016. And that is to support urban stormwater management by investing in and facilitating research that leads to discoveries that can help you and I prevent, minimize, and mitigate the impacts of urban runoff. And second, to support the transfer of that acquired knowledge to those who can best use that information: practitioners, professionals, and policymakers. What I'd like to begin with is the Minnesota Stormwater Research Roadmap, published in 2018. Itself was a research project that spanned multiple years, that included literature reviews, multiple surveys of different stakeholder groups, focus groups, and interviews. What the Minnesota Stormwater Research Roadmap did is identify 8 broad strategic areas for urban stormwater research. I don't expect you to read the graphic on the right side of your screen, but I'm quickly going to take you through each of those 8 strategic areas. One of those was the call for research to improve the characterization of urban stormwater and watersheds. Some examples of specific research needs identified, including looking at the sources and impacts of non-regulated and emerging contaminants, research about the characterization of runoff from specific land uses, and research into monitoring methods and technology and alternative ways we could do urban stormwater monitoring. A second broad area of research identified was the need for improved education approaches to increase the public perception and their knowledge. Some examples of research needs identified included effective education approaches to elicit behavior change across a variety of audiences, research about the effectiveness of education approaches themselves to both increase knowledge and how do those education approaches lead to improved water quality. And a third area of research need was identifying or developing evaluation methods for education and stormwater communication efforts. A third area of research need identified was we needed more research to inform effective pollution prevention or source reduction at the source of the pollutants to begin with. So this included looking at effectiveness and comparison of a variety of pollution prevention practices. A really good example of this and what the roadmap identified was a priority for research investment into street sweeping as an effective tool to reduce pollutants. A fourth category of research need was to look at or evaluate the efficacy of stormwater management practices at the watershed scale. This also included the subwatershed and catchment scale. Some examples of research needs identified in the roadmap included looking at trends of pollutants in surface water, groundwater at these various watersheds, subwatershed, or catchment scales, research to develop new metrics for monitoring and ecosystem and economic benefits, and also research looking at how could we use the wealth of existing stormwater data we already have. Another broad area of research need was the call for investment into research that could improve the performance and reduce the maintenance on structural practices that are frequently and commonly used. You can imagine the list of these practices or tools is long. You can think of things like sump basins, rain gardens, filter strips, and the list goes on. The roadmap identified research needs in looking at these practices in terms of their long-term maintenance, their long-term performance, and what is their true and expected lifespan. Another research need area under these practices included looking at what is their pollution removal compared to what was designed or modeled and how is it actually performing now. Looking at research in terms of what is their true runoff reduction efficiency and pollution removal efficiency. While research called for these looking at information needs on these commonly used practices, another broad category of research need was the investment into investigations on new and innovative stormwater practices. So we continually need to evolve the suite of practices. And so what new things could be on the horizon that we need to test and evaluate? In Minnesota, at least in terms of the 2018 roadmap, a specific area of priority included stormwater reuse systems, as well as the use of trees in our vegetative practices. How do trees perform? What is their role and function in terms of bioretention and other types of practices? Another area of innovative practices that studies were called out in terms of need included looking at filtration practices, specifically media and different types of media and media components. A seventh area of research need called out by the roadmap was research investments that could improve stormwater management policies. That included things like, could we study the evaluation of Minnesota's minimal impact development standards, or MIDS, which is a voluntary approach to volume control. With nearly 10 years under our belt, The evaluation of how MIDS is performing was one research area identified. Another one was looking at the MS4 program at a larger scale, how effective it has been to ultimately meet our desired goals of improved water quality. Another area of policy research need identified was looking at how we could better integrate stormwater management and clean water goals with flood control goals, and how are those two related and how could they be better integrated. Finally, the eighth broad category of research identified in the roadmap was looking at research investigations in terms of cost efficiency of stormwater practices and approaches. So think cost benefit analysis of stormwater practices. How could we develop new methods for calculating and demonstrating cost and benefits? And how could we perform life cycle cost assessments more effectively, more efficiently, and alternative systems to do that? That is a very quick review of the research roadmap and the 8 broad categories of research identified in it. Again, I would emphasize that each of these 8 areas have a lot of specificity under each. Towards the end of this presentation, I will give you a resource where you can find out more about the roadmap and discover more about what is in these 8 areas of research. Where I'd like to go next is to emphasize how the roadmap became a foundation for research investments of the Minnesota Stormwater Research Council. Rather than what's reflected here in this image on your screen, it wasn't a road closed for us. It actually opened up a road. The roadmap became a foundation for investments into research over 5 different RFP cycles. I'm quickly going to take you through these RFP cycles and highlight for you the research priorities that were identified in each, because they were unique. So let me start with 2017. This was our inaugural RFP for the Minnesota Stormwater Research Council. It identified 3 very specific research priorities in the competitive RFP. Those were call out for research proposals on stormwater pretreatment practices, proposals on the effectiveness of current practices, and there was a list given, and a specific call out for research on winter chloride salt de-icer alternatives. In 2018, we had our second RFP. It was the first time the Research Council established 2 specific categories of research proposals. We created the Rapid Response Project category. As the name implies, these were research projects that could be completed in less than 18 months. They involved limited new data collection. They were called out into 3 very specific need areas. The second category that was created in the 2018 RFP were discovery projects. These were projects that were much bigger and longer in duration, up to 3 years, included new data collection, often included diverse interdisciplinary research teams, and discovery projects were welcome in 7 categories. Now, something to keep in mind is the 2017 and the 2018 RFPs were actually published, if you will, before the roadmap was published. So these were precursors, but the roadmap and the work behind it had been going on since about 2016. So we had some insights about what to include in the 2017 and the 2018 RFPs. Let's jump ahead to 2020. The 2020 competitive RFP had now the roadmap as a foundation. We included all 8 research need categories in the RFP. And using the Research Council Advisory Board, we also identified 8 additional priority focus areas. If you will, a proposal was reviewed by its interception with both the roadmap areas and some of these priority focus areas. The 2022 RFP, again, had all 8 Minnesota roadmap categories identified, along with some additional specificity and priorities identified by the Council's Advisory Board in the Water Resources Center. Now, in the 2022 competitive research cycle, a large challenge was revealed to us, and that was research needs on urban stormwater ponds. What was demonstrated and revealed was we had many unanswered questions about the effectiveness, the operation of, and the management of one of the most used and proliferous practices or stormwater control measures used in the state, if not in the upper Midwest and across the country. What questions or research needs should we be addressing on urban stormwater ponds first? Because the list was long. And so the Research Council, in partnership with the Water Resources Center, embarked on a separate process over a 3-year period that resulted in a comprehensive report on pond research needs and a database of all national, actually turned out to be international research conducted on ponds. So this project included a large-scale lit review, stakeholder input, looking at past and current pond research, and working with our 20-member advisory board. All this information was compiled together that resulted in a short-term strategy for pond research by the Minnesota Stormwater Research Council. So that short-term pond research strategy, again, is available online. I'll show you where to find that momentarily. But we use that information to inform our 5th competitive research cycle in 2023 that was urban stormwater pond specific. This RFP called for research proposals in 2 specific categories. 1, research on practices that could improve or increase pond effectiveness for pollutant management and hydrologic functions. The second research area was research about pond performance on primary pollutants of concern, hydrology, and other functions. Now, both of these research areas had a lot more specificity identified. There's a series of sub-bullets that really provide some additional detail about research needs the council was looking for on ponds. So I encourage you to consult the pond research RFP for the list of those priorities and our pond research needs summary for additional information. So again, what this demonstrates and hopefully relays to you is the stormwater research roadmap and the information or research needs it identified was the foundation for a series of investments by the Minnesota Stormwater Research Council, the Water Resources Center, and Minnesota as a whole. The roadmap, the RFPs, the pond research need report, and other resources are all available for you online to help you start thinking about what are our research needs for next year and for the years ahead. Now, I do want to take a pause in the investments we've made to date and give you a very quick summary of what that has resulted in. The Minnesota Stormwater Research Council has invested in 31 urban stormwater research projects since its inception in 2016. 2023 marked a huge benchmark for us in that 23 of those research projects are now fully completed. We have 8 active investigations ongoing that include 4 rather innovative research studies on urban stormwater ponds. This is our portfolio of research projects completed and underway. By the way, these represent a $3.7 million cash investment by the Minnesota Stormwater Research Council and the Water Resource Center into urban stormwater research. That is a large capital investment that we have made to begin to answer some of the priority and critical questions we have about urban stormwater management here in Minnesota. I do want to give you a quick summary of where those 31 project investments have been. This is my attempt to do this in one slide. The number one area that we've made research investment in since 2016 through the Research Council has been in the assessment and research to improve the performance of existing commonly used practices. You can think about rain gardens, filter strips, sump basins as being some of those frequently and commonly used practices. The second area of research investment has been into research to discover new and innovative practices. That includes things like stormwater reuse. That includes things like filter systems and media mixes. The third area of research investment the council has been made is in areas of the characterization of urban stormwater runoff. We've made some research investments looking at the wealth of stormwater data that we have and looking at trend analysis. And the third area that we've made major research investments in is into pollution prevention practices, specifically street sweeping. And for those of you listening and watching this presentation, you may recognize this, that Minnesota has led the way over the last 10 years in making research investments into various components of street sweeping as a pollution prevention practice. I'm sure you are interested in more about these 31 research investments. Each research project has its own webpage where you can find out more information. Depending on where that research project is in its life cycle, you can find an abstract, a mid-project presentation, or if the project is completed, you will find final reports, data tables, or perhaps a recording to a seminar that featured the project conclusions. If you go to the Research Council page, either through the Research Council website or through the Water Resources Center website, click on research projects reflected in this image on the screen right now. You can access each of those 31 project web pages for more information. So that brings us to this fall in revising, in finding out what are the research needs for Minnesota in the years ahead. What information do you lack to manage urban stormwater to prevent, minimize, or mitigate pollution or other impacts? Which practices or stormwater control measures require more research? Do you require more information on? The roadmap and the 8 broad areas of urban stormwater research needs was never meant to be static. Research needs evolve. And we need your input to route the direction of those research needs and investments for the near future. And so with all of that said, we invite you to participate in a process this fall to help us identify and articulate research or information needs. I leave you with 5 actions that you can take. First, participate in an upcoming focus group where we will listen to you as practitioners, professionals, policymakers, and others about your real and perceived research and information needs. We have a series of focus groups, both virtually and in person, that we invite you to participate in. Those focus groups are listed on our brand new Stormwater Needs website, wrc.uofm.edu/stormwater needs. You can take a look at when those focus groups are offered and registered and participate in those here in November. The second action you can take is to review the roadmap in the 8 research need areas. Review the previous RFPs and the research priorities that were identified. Actions 3 and 4 are related to each other. While we will ask for your contributions in a focus group setting, we will also ask, and you are able to contribute your research needs through a survey. We find participants are better able to participate in surveys and provide valuable input if you know what the questions are in advance. So the survey questions are now posted on the Research Needs website. We encourage you to open those up, print those out, reflect on the survey questions before you provide your input. And then take the survey, provide your input. As part of the survey process, if you provide your email in the survey, you will be sent a copy of your responses, as well as a link to edit your responses if you think of something after you've already hit the submit button. And finally, another input mechanism is to contact a member of our diverse and large advisory board. Again, the advisory board members are listed on the website. So all of this information is available for you to help us identify Minnesota stormwater research needs as we embark on new research studies and new research investments in 2024 and beyond. Again, I encourage you to visit our newly established website in regards to ascertaining Minnesota stormwater needs. All of this information is posted there, and we look forward for your participation in this process this fall, and as we work together to answer the questions we have to make our efforts in stormwater management more effective and more efficient as we seek to prevent, mitigate, and minimize our impacts of urban stormwater runoff to our environment and to our communities.